සුබ සන්ධ්‍යාවක් සුබ උදෑසනක් සියලු දෙනාටම good evening, good afternoon and good morning. අපි මේ දැන් සුමාන දෙකකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා අපි නියුක්ලියර් පවර් ප්ලාන්ට් එකක් ලංකාවට ගලපනවද නැද්ද? ඒකෙන් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ලාභ මොනවද අලාභ මොනවද කියලා ලොකු ඩිබේට් එකක් කරගෙන හිටියා. ඒකට පස්සේ අපිට තේරෙනවා මේ එක සැරයකට තීරණයක් ගන්න බෑ. ඒ වුණාට සාමාන්‍ය කන්සෙන්සස් එකක් ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් අද ඒක ලොකු දෙයක්. ඒ වෙනුවෙන් ගොඩක් අය ගොඩක් ඩීටේල්ස් දීලා ගිය සැරේ කතා කරා. ඒ ඔක්කොම මම අපි දැම්ම වීඩියෝ එකේ YouTube එකට ඕන කෙනෙකුට හොයන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. ඒ අතරෙම තව ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් ගොඩක් ඒ ගැන ලියලා තියුණු දේවල් ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන්. එතකොට ඒක ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් ලින්ක්ස් උත් අපි ගිය සැරේ හැමෝටම යවුවා. එතකොට අපි හිතනවා ලොකු දැනුමක් දැන් හැමෝටම ලැබෙන්නේ නැති මේ ගැන කියලා. එතකොට අද අපි මේක ගැන තවත් කතා කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඊට ඉස්සෙල්ලා මම පොඩ්ඩක් සමරයිස් කරන්න ඕනේ අපි මේකට වැදගත් වෙන දත්ත මොනවද කියලා. එකක් දැන් ලෝකෙම climate change එකයි ඒකේ effects ගැනයි ලොකු කතාවක් යනවා. climate change එකට අඩු කිරීම සඳහා අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් වැඩ ගැනත් ගොඩක් කතා වෙනවා. මේ තියෙන graph එකෙන් පෙන්නන්නේ climate change ඒ කියන්නේ number of loss events කොච්චර ලෝකෙ වැඩි වෙගෙන යනවාද කියලා. මේ 1980 ඉඳලා 2015 වෙනකොට 2020 වෙනකන් තියෙන මෙතන climatological events. ලංකාවත් මේ ගැන හොඳටම natural disasters සමග අපි දැකලා තියෙනවා මේකේ වෙලා තියෙන දේවල්. එතකොට climate change එකට ගොඩක් මේ carbon dioxide ගැන කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ගැන කතා කරලා බලනකොට renewable energy වලට major interest එකක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන මේ වෙලාවේ ලෝකේ සහ ලංකාවෙත් ඇතුළත්ව. දැන් අපේ energy production එකට ලංකාවේ දැන්ට power cuts තියෙනවත් අතරම මේ 27ක් මේ 2020 assessment එකක් 27ක් තියෙන්නේ thermal oil වලින් 37ක් තියෙන්නේ thermal coal වලින්. එතකොට පේනවා මේ ඔක්කොම ගොඩක් දේවල් මේ import කරන fuels වලින් තමයි අපි දැන් ලංකාවේ දැන්ට power generation එක කෙරීගෙන යන්නේ. මේක ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක්. මොකද අපිට මේ දැන් economic crisis එකක් තියෙන වෙලාව. එතකොට මේ ඒ නිසා renewable energy ගැන ලොකු interest එකක් තියෙනවා. ගොඩක් අය කතා කරගෙන යනවා. and මම මේ කියන්නත් ඕනේ මේ February මාසේ 8 වෙනිදා කැලණියේ තියෙන ඕරේෂන් එක කරන්නේ මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක වෙනුවෙන්. ඒ කියන්නේ can we transform Sri Lanka to be a renewable energy island කියන එක. මේකේ author very exceptional professor කෙනෙක් professor ලක්ෂ්මන් දිසානායක. professor ලක්ෂ්මන් දිසානායක මම සතුටු කියන්නේ අද audience එකෙත් ඉන්නවා මේකේ. ඒ අතරේ economic crisis එක බලනකොට ලංකාවේ මේ default looms කියලා තියෙන මේ අපිට තියෙන ණය ප්‍රමාණය ගෙවන්න තියෙන ප්‍රමාණය හැම අවුරුද්දෙම. ඉතින් මේ 3 බිලියන් කියන ගාණ තමයි දැන් අපිට අවිල්ල තිබුණේ. ඉතින් දැන් මේ 3 බිලියන් ගාණ දිගටම හැම අවුරුද්දෙම වගේ ගෙවන්න ඕනේ 2028 29 විතර වෙනකන්. ඉතින් ලොකු economic crisis එකට අපිට යන්න වෙන තත්ත්වයක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ අපි careful නැති වුණොත්. එතකොට ඒ නිසා අද මේ නියුක්ලියර් පවර් ප්ලාන්ට් ගැන මට ප්‍රසන්ටේෂන් රික්වෙස්ට් 3ක් ලැබිලා තිබුණා. ඒ ඔක්කොටම කතා කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා ප්‍රොෆෙසර් ධර්මික කියන්නේ සෝලර් එක්ස්පර්ට් කෙනෙක් UK 5 minutes කතා කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා. නිල්මිනි කියන්නේ lawyer කෙනෙක් UK and she wanted to talk for 5 minutes. and කීර්ති කියන්නේ Rolls Royce කියන්නේ ලොකු කම්පැනි එකක් හොඳ ඒකේ ලොකු එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් දෙන කෙනෙක්. එයා 10 minutes කතා කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා තියෙනවා. ඒ අතරේ තව අපිට ලියුමකුත් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා ප්‍රොෆෙසර් චන්ද්‍රේ ධර්මවර්ධන. ඒක මම හිතුවා මේ සමරයිස් කරන්න. මොකද ඒක ගොඩු රෙලෙවන්ස් එකක් තියෙන නිසා. චන්ද්‍රමර්ධන කියන්නේ ඇඩ්වයිසරි බෝඩ් එකේ ලංකාවේ ඇඩ්වයිසරි බෝඩ් එකේ ඉඳලා තියෙනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකා ඇටොමික් එනර්ජි ඔතොරිටි එක හදන වෙලාවේ. ඒ අතරේ he has worked as a consultant to the French Atomic Energy Commissariat in France for 10 years. එතකොට he works actively with Los Alamos laboratory and the Lawrence Livermore laboratory and on laser fusion, so he's quite aware of this issue. And also he's reviewer on scientific projects on nuclear energy and nuclear material for USA and Canada. So he is fully aware of this situation, so it was worth mentioning what he mentioned in his letter in a summary. Now he says that Sri Lanka should first set up a very small research reactors so that scientists and technicians can be trained. Some useful medical radioisotopes can be manufactured. Then Sri Lanka has no uranium fissile material. So, but there is a potential for thorium-based reactor in the very long term, not in the short term, is there because thorium is available in Sri Lanka. So, therefore, if you have a nuclear plant, we'll still have to import uranium. The standard commercial reactors, mentioned varga, are all well beyond Sri Lanka's financial capacity at the moment. I thought Sri Lanka does not have the logistic means to deal with nuclear accident, and Sri Lanka has no place to get rid of its nuclear waste. Then he concludes that Sri Lanka nuclear energy will be largely a foreign exchange black hole, and Sri Lanka can fulfill its energy needs using floating solar and rooftop solar. So that's his view about the current situation. Then I'm glad that Professor Eradi Rosa, I hope he's in the audience, the chairman of Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, told me that he's happy to come and talk. So if he's there in the audience, I'll allow him to talk. And Professor Rosa is currently the chairman of the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board. And he qualified with a first class in BSc in 1979 from University of Colombo. This makes one thing is common with me because I and him would have entered the universities on the same year in 1975. And he has an MSc in physics, and then he has a PhD on nuclear physics from University of Pittsburgh in USA. So he's well aware of what is there. So I think after that, we will go into the presentations that I mentioned. But if he's there, I think we should allow him to speak first. Is Professor Rosa there?
Professor Rosa told me that he will join in later part because he is stuck, still stuck in the examining department. So within 20-30 minutes, he will be joining.
Okay, can you let me know when he comes in so we can start with the presentations then, if that's okay, yeah?
Okay, sure.
All right, okay, thanks, thank you, yeah. Okay, so Professor Rosa will join shortly, and I think we should start with our list of people who wanted to present, and I think Professor Dharma is there.
I'm very happy to see Premal and Malinda. Thank you very much for joining Malinda, because Malinda and Premal. It is very important for us to discuss this openly. Please don't take any of these comments personally, because it is important for us to discuss. At the same time, I can see Laxman, perhaps Oliver will join later, and myself. We have half a century teaching experience in universities, and Kirti Devendra has lifelong experience in industry, Rolls-Royce, on energy issues. In addition, I have 3 decades of lecturing sustainable energy and environmental management for MSc cohort in our university. We always, during this, have a debate on pros and cons of every energy source. Usually, this MSc cohort is about more than 100 international MSc students. So we have discussed all these issues. So during my presentation, I just want to consider these 6 questions. Let me go one by one. The first one is, let me get the point again. Right, point is there. Right, this is my first question. Is nuclear energy clean or renewable? We all know that, we all agree, carbon dioxide emission is not during the energy production when we have the power plant, nuclear power plant. However, uranium mining, purification, 5 years of building at least 5 years of building the power plant, and a lot of people don't talk about this 30 years of decommissioning of the power station emit carbon dioxide. So we cannot omit any of these, yes, there is no carbon dioxide emission here, but we have carbon dioxide emission in all these. At the same time, nuclear power plants also produce radioactive waste with long half-lives and hence need continuous management. Therefore, nuclear energy is not clean or not renewable. So that is the decision on all these points. My second question, can Sri Lanka afford the cost of nuclear energy? Average nuclear power plant cost in the region of a few billion US dollars. Sri Lankan economy is too small to afford such expensive power plants. In fact, we are looking for 3 billion loan from IMF to recover. So these projects cost the same amount in that range. Another important thing is, do we need to establish import of radioactive and dangerous nuclear fuel in the future? That is very important. We are importing coal, oil, gas, and we still have issues. And also we have nuclear waste management. Sri Lanka is a country where we cannot manage domestic waste. We have problems. If we have dangerous radioactive nuclear waste, how can we manage it? We need to think about this. So my answer is no, Sri Lanka cannot afford the cost of nuclear plants and continuous import of nuclear fuels. We have all the problems in the world in Sri Lanka at the moment. The only thing we don't have is the danger of nuclear energy. Are we trying to bring that as well? So we should not consider nuclear energy for Sri Lanka. Third one, do we have high security and discipline required for running nuclear plants in Sri Lanka? We need high security and high discipline in Sri Lanka. Sadly, I have to say, we do not have both of those within our country. I want to say something with my experience. In 2004, I was in Bangladesh. It was a government discussion. I gave a plenary lecture on renewable energy sources. Power and Energy Minister and the Secretary was sitting there. After my lecture, the minister asked me, Professor Dharmadasa, we have decided to go for nuclear energy. What is your comment? What is your view? What I said was this: nuclear energy is not a clean energy source. It is like a huge sleeping giant. It will produce energy for many years, but one day accident could happen. That accident will kill large number of people, tens of thousands of people. It is not only that, the land will become not suitable for human habitation. We know that what happens in Chernobyl. 37 years, land cannot be used. So that is the situation with nuclear energy. That is my view. You are the person authorized to do it, make the decision. Decision is yours for your own people. That was my answer. The same answer applies to Sri Lanka as well. So nuclear power may be used in developed countries, but certainly not suitable for developing countries like Sri Lanka. Please remember, even many developed countries, this is a list of some of these, have said no to nuclear power because they know the danger of nuclear power. So our answer is, for Sri Lanka, nuclear energy is not suitable. My next question, can we handle any nuclear accidents or manage nuclear waste produced? We know that, I don't have to repeat these are the latest 3 nuclear accidents in developed countries: USA, Chernobyl, and Japan. And also nuclear plants are vulnerable to natural disasters like tsunami and earthquakes. The latest one, Japanese one, was due to tsunami. The terrorist attacks, I must say that I live in north of England, very close to Sellafield nuclear plant. One day, there was a message during those terrorist attacks. There was a paper article saying, if there is a terrorist attack to the nuclear plant, take the iodine tablets. They were distributing iodine tablets to all the people around there. What a fearful world it creates. And the people were frightened because they say that if there is a terrorist attack, the government was distributing iodine tablets. Iodine tablets will not save people. It brings fear into their minds. So, note the German Chancellor's decision in 2011. I want to make a decision, Malinda, here because I was listening to your comments and also Kirti Devendra's comments here. In fact, she decided to phase out all 17 nuclear plants by August 2022. Yes, it was a political decision. She made that decision to safeguard the German public because the government is responsible for the safety of the people. So she decided we don't need the nuclear accident in the country. She decided that. At the same time, as Malinda said last time, yes, there were excess energy produced in France. She didn't have any authority to make decisions there. She decided to import energy from France. Nothing wrong with it. But after 11 years, because of the Russian war, Germany has an energy problem, and they are now thinking about, shall we keep these last 1 or 2 nuclear plants? Nothing wrong with it. It is after 11 years, because of the Russian war, they can't get gas and oil from Russia, so they are rethinking. So nothing wrong with that, but that decision was mainly made for the security of the people. Sri Lanka has no track record for domestic waste disposal, as I said before. How can we trust the dangerous, how can we manage the dangerous radioactive nuclear waste in the country? So nuclear energy creates a fearful world. Our responsibility is to create a safe and peaceful world for our younger generation. So we have to take a very important decision here collectively. We are the knowledgeable people, and we should say to these people, to political people, this technology is not suitable for Sri Lanka. Please don't go ahead for that. Every year we had a nuclear debate in my university. During the last 3 decades, one of my PhD students said, this is a very selfish energy consumption because we use nuclear energy today for our benefit, for our comfort, but we leave the nuclear waste for our younger generation. That is a very selfish way of using energy. That is what one of my PhD students said in a debate. My 5th question is, do we have human capacity to run nuclear plants in the country? No, we don't. We may have few MSCs or PhD holders within the country, but it is not adequate to run such a serious project. Malinda, this is with, I have been teaching in universities for 51 years. I am saying this openly. I was watching your presentation. You were using for the energy unit, this one, kilowatt hours. There are 2 serious mistakes here. People who watch this will say, this group don't know the difference between small k and capital K. Small k is for kilo, capital K is for Kelvin, temperature. And also W should be capital. This is the convention, SI convention. Kindly correct this before you give that presentation to anybody else. This is with my French, in a friendly way. I am correcting it. This is the right way, because please don't use Kelvin here instead of kilo. Please correct this. It is important for us to go with the right values. Bringing nuclear plants to Sri Lanka from any vendor will provide business opportunities and job creations for that particular vendor. If we bring it from Russia, we are creating business for Russia, jobs for Russia, rather than Sri Lankans. There will be few Sri Lankans involved, but we have to be very careful why these people are trying to sell it to us. Now, coming to the sixth one, Sri Lanka is blessed with safe and indigenous energy sources. Why dangerous nuclear power? What we need to do in Sri Lanka, use fossil fuel. This is in amber. All these renewable energy sources, we have all these in the country. What we need to do is rapidly introduce renewables and gradually phase out imported fossil fuel. And also, I can remember the last discussion, there was a discussion saying solar energy and wind, solar is only during the daytime. Please remember, what we have now is green hydrogen coming. It is happening everywhere. What you normally do is use the freely available solar whenever available and wind whenever available to break down freely available water to produce green hydrogen. Green hydrogen, you burn it whenever you want, you get the energy. Now this is established. What we need to do is, please don't say that we don't have the energy carrier or the energy storage with renewables. This is coming in a huge way. So the whole world is going from carbon economy to carbon neutral economy and then to hydrogen economy. This is happening now. We need to think about that. We need to go in that direction. So nuclear energy is certainly not an option for Sri Lanka. The photovoltaic or solar energy, PV, for peace, and renewables means energy for all. Yes, for renewables, but nuclear energy is not certainly right for Sri Lanka. So this is my last thank you slide. What I need to say here is nuclear energy creates a fearful world. Renewables create a safe and peaceful world for our next generations. So what we need to do is, this is our sun, harvest the sun by using renewable energy technologies. Thank you very much. During these 31 years, I have supervised 30 PhDs in the energy sector, and I have taught 31 MSc cohorts with these energy technologies. With all that in my belt, my suggestion is nuclear energy is not suitable for our Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dharmesh, for that excellent summary. And are there any comments from the audience for this, or any suggestions, anything to say before we go for the next speaker? Anybody?
Can I say something very quickly?
Yeah.
Dharme, thank you very much for that presentation. You made my life a lot easier because you already have covered some of the things I wanted to say. So I can perhaps do my speech in less than 10 minutes. Thank you very much for that.
All right. Thank you, Kirsi. There are no comments or anybody raise hands at the moment, but we can still take questions at the end of this presentation.
I think Ranjan has raised the hand.
Ranjan has raised the...
Yeah, Ranjan, yes, Ranjan, go for it, yeah.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation to convince even the most doubtful person that nuclear energy is not suitable for Sri Lanka. I congratulate you on that wonderful presentation. I think we should give that uh, greater publicity in Sri Lanka. Now I want Dharme to add a little more to what you have said. This is the breakdown for a single day, one particular day. I have taken this day at random. Sri Lanka's consumption of energy for a day. Generated by Mahavali, 44.91%. Balance from coal and fuel, 58.09%. Now the breakdown of electricity generated for 18,123. Hydroelectricity, 10.50 gigawatts. Renewable energy other than hydro, 6.68 gigawatts. So totally renewable supplied 17%, a little more than 17%. Coal supplied 12.9. Fuel and thermal oil 7.68. Independent power producers 3.27. The total consumption for that day was 41.07 gigawatts. That's how much we consumed, Sri Lanka consumed energy on that day I gave, 18,123. And how that 41.07 was generated, I gave you the breakdown. You see, out of that 41.007, 17%, nearly 18% was generated by renewable energy, which to me is a very encouraging sign, that we should pursue renewable energy, and we can reach almost near 100%. I don't say that we can go entirely 100% because of other reasons which I don't want to. I can explain, but I don't want to take that much of time. Now, today's paper says US $2 billion worth of wind energy projects stuck in limbo for 2 years. 4 companies have submitted 2 years ago to produce renewable energy, and their projects are stuck in the BOI, Sustainable Energy Authority, and the CEB, Ceylon Electricity Board. What are these 4 companies? Ming Yang Smart Energy Group Limited. Second, Envision Energy Limited. 3, Jade Power Hydrostar. And 4, China Machinery Engineering Corporation. These 4 companies submitted 2 years ago projects to generate renewable energy. But our own people, and state authorities, institutions are sitting on them at a time when we are struggling to produce the energy we need, all because of lack of foreign exchange. So it's very clear that the government, that there is a mafia. There is reason to believe the accusations leveled against these institutions that they are controlled by mafia. So Dharme, I think this information will be also very helpful to you to strengthen your arguments, to support the cause of renewable energy, and to dissuade our people from being misled once again. One more point I want to add, to begin with, you see, do we have the money? We are already stuck in I don't think we can recover from this debt in a hurry. You see, It's a debt trap. Do we want to, as you said quite rightly, this is another black, we are going deeper into debt. So to begin with, you see, to start with, I don't think we can even think about it because we don't have uranium. See, if we had to import, we didn't have oil, we had to import. Then we thought coal will be cheaper, and now we have got stuck there. Now we are going to import uranium. So this dependence, Sri Lanka's dependence, is increasing by the day. And we are losing the meaning of our sovereignty. I'll stop there now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Ranjan. Malinda has raised hand as well. Malinda, you want to go for it? And Dharma, if you bring the slides down, you'll see the others as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Chula Nanda. And I have listened Dr. Dharma Das's presentation. Thank you very much for it. I appreciate this. Is compare and contrast with the renewable and other opportunities. Yeah, true. Renewable, currently government also encourage renewable. It is no doubt. But renewable is a kind of intermittent energy sources. So as a electricity generation concept, we identified only 3 sources as easily dispatchable sources. They are coal, nuclear, and LNG. So due to many environmental pressurization, coal is going to be out of the scene within next 2 decades. So that's why we have to think about other options. In that perspective, Sri Lanka also conducting this feasibility study. We cannot say that instantly we can go for the nuclear. It may be beyond 2030 or beyond 2040. We only conducting study and planning program. In your presentation, you criticize that you are distributing iodine tablet in Sellafield area. Yeah, that kind of thing normally happen in any accident, even not only in Sellafield, but also in Fukushima also same thing happened. But you never mentioned about the under construction or ongoing nuclear power program in United Kingdom. In Hinkley Point C, EDF, Electricity de France, constructing huge nuclear power reactors. Sizewell, Waifa are under construction sites. Even Fukushima Daiichi incident happened. Many countries postponed nuclear power program, but British not done because they are in insecurity of the energy. Because gas from winter and autumn season, you know very well than me because we are staying in UK. So they rely on the gas for not only electricity but for the heating purpose. So due to Russian-Ukrainian war, that option is also lost for the UK. Anyway, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and current Prime Minister also make a bill in Parliament to strengthen and way forward the nuclear power program. In addition, many some perspective, EDF, Electricity de France, enrolling many new nuclear builds in UK. In addition, American Westinghouse and Chinese nuclear vendor companies also enrolling constructing nuclear power plants in UK. So in addition, their universities also encouraging to follow nuclear engineering and nuclear science masters and bachelor program. So that perspective, UK given a huge boost to strengthen and way forward the nuclear power programs with the collaboration of France. In addition, you have mentioned that Germany situation. Germany, yes, Germany, they're going to shut down all the power plants in last December. But why they continue until this year, April? Because they cannot survive their power supply with other sources. So in that perspective, that date also may be extended until the end of this year. So we have to carefully think about those things. Nuclear waste management also you have mentioned. Currently, Sri Lanka haven't much exposure on nuclear waste management. But any nuclear power vendor country or company going to establish a nuclear power reactor in a newcomer country, they clearly sign intergovernmental agreement to, and they take a bond to handle the fuel cycle, cycle, not only front end, but also back end. Back end means they help to carefully handle the waste. It means intermittent waste, intermediate waste, or primary waste or high-level radioactive waste. As an example, Bangladesh intergovernmental agreement, Russia agreed to get back their high-level waste to Russian territory. So, in addition, they agreed to reprocess the nuclear fuel, spent fuel asset. If any nuclear reactor that we can use spent fuel, that spent fuel can be mixed with the plutonium and then produce uranium mixed oxide. That uranium mixed oxide again can be used in a reactor. So that kind of thing are well developed technologies in last decade. So that kind of thing I cannot explain one by one, but some of the points you have shown in your presentations are not true. Those things are maybe okay in 1990s or 1980s, but nowadays some technologies are adapted and it's applied even in embarking country. Bangladesh, Pakistan, they're going for the nuclear large scale in future also. India carefully handle their nuclear power programs. They handle 22 nuclear reactors. They are under constructing 7 reactors. Pakistan really they carefully handle 6 reactors. I personally visit Islamabad nuclear power plant. 304 reactors are carefully handled by Pakistan nationalities. If you travel through the road in Bangladesh or India or Pakistan, you can compare and contrast what is the life quality of Sri Lanka and those countries. Their literacy rate is far below than Sri Lanka. Yes, we are in a very huge financial crisis, but there are many financial modeling for help to support the nuclear power program. As an example, in Bangladesh, Russian agreement, 90% financed by Russian government for support the nuclear power program. They given 10-year grace period for Bangladesh. Next 20-year period, they have to pay back their money to the power plant expenses, but it is 2 to 3% interest rate. Bangladesh not paid by cash. They export textile for covering their expenses to the Russia. So there are many interesting financial modeling. Even we conduct a discussion with the Honorable His Excellency Russian Ambassador 1 month ago. Our chairman also attended, our DG also attended. He pointed out that there are many financial modeling. We, in collaboration with Russia in many parts, we export tea, textile, even many tourists came to Sri Lanka. We can build up many financial avenues to that kind of nuclear power plant, not only strengthen the electricity area, but also given many local job market. Not only we need nuclear scientists or engineers for nuclear power program, 20% engineers we need in civil engineering. Maybe 20% area we need in mechanical engineering. We need quality scientists. We can transfer the technology. We cannot transfer nuclear technology within one year, but 4 to 5 years we can train. We can train BSc, Masters.
Mr. Chairman, can I point out that?
Okay, Professor Chula, thank you. Likewise, I can even answers for one by one. Anyway, any can criticize anything, but this is not. This is a kind of a study and planning program. We are not going to nuclear power once. It means we cannot go in within short period. It may be beyond 2030, maybe 2040. We cannot think in as an institution, Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board. We have to take cabinet approvals, parliament, public acceptance status. We have to identify what is the financial modeling. We have to select the suitable sites. Many things. Even disaster management center, we have to get the approval from the disaster management center for our emergency response and preparedness activities. Currently, Sri Lankan Atomic Energy Board and Atomic Energy Regulatory Council moderately develop nuclear security activities. Many tri-forces area, Army, Navy, Air Force, Special Task Force officials train for the strengthen the nuclear security area. It is we in our region, Indian subcontinent, many nuclear power reactors operating. So Sri Lanka, we haven't operated nuclear power plant, but we have to carefully observe the other nuclear power reactors activities as well. Because within our territory, 200 kilometers away from our territory, Kudankulam nuclear power reactors are operated. We have to carefully study those things. I only share one slide from the Ceylon Electricity Board, which presented 2 weeks ago in policymakers forum. So kindly attention this slide. If you're given administrative privilege to share this slide, Professor Chula, I can share this.
Just a second.
This is presented by Ceylon Electricity Board, one of the engineer. She works in on behalf of generation planning studies. You can see solar, wind, those are seasonal energy sources. We can establish battery energy sources, but we have to invest a lot of money. In last session, Professor Prinath also explained that battery energy sources are very expensive. But coal is cheap. LNG, we can help. Those are dispatchable energy sources. I think Dr. Tilak Siembalapati also attended this workshop. He will clearly explain. So those are intermittent energy sources, solar, wind, hydro. But our hydropower fleet also saturated. Our electricity demand increased by 6%. So we have to carefully think about those things. Solar, wind, it is okay. No debate about solar, wind. But we have to cater from the dispatchable energy sources, either coal, LNG, or nuclear. Due to many environmentally pressurization, coal going to be out within next 20 decades. So we have to think about options, even hydrogen fuel cell or nuclear or any other option. In addition, Sri Lankan grid is isolated. Our grid is not interconnected with any energy sources. But other countries' energy sources are all all the electrical grids are interconnected. Even Bangladesh interconnected with India, Nepal, Bhutan interconnected with India, entire European Union countries interconnected, Baltic countries interconnected. So Sri Lanka is still isolated grid. So we have to think about those things. I can, time to time, I can give my answers and many speakers are waiting to explain their views. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Malinda. There are 4 people raised hands. I'll give you the names now so you'll know in order. Prinath first, then Tilak Siembalapitiya, then Kirthi, and then Nilmani. So let's get Prinath to talk. Prinath, please. Prinath?
Thank you, Professor Chula.
Yeah.
I listened to Professor Dharmadasa's presentation very carefully. And I tend to agree with him, but with a qualification. Nuclear power is not an option for Sri Lanka at present. When I say at present, I would say at least for the next 10 years, it is not an option for Sri Lanka. So what we need to decide is whether we want to keep the option of using nuclear power someday in the future open, or are we deciding now itself that we will never use nuclear power under any circumstances? So that is the issue we are discussing. We need to discuss, because I think it's very clear. We can't use nuclear power right away. We can't use it now. We can't, I don't think we can use it within the next 10 years minimum. But if we are thinking of keeping the option of using nuclear power someday in the future, there are certain things we need to do. Nuclear power projects require a fair amount of lead time. There are so many preparations to do. And about the need for human resources was mentioned. We need to develop our human resources. There are so many other things that need to do. We discussed about the milestone document of the IAEA last time. There are 19 requirements to be met even before you are in a position to decide to use nuclear power. Now we are nowhere near that. We are heading in that direction, but no, we are not there yet. And the other key thing is we have a system of planning, our expansion planning of our generating system, right? So Epsilon Electricity Board is using a well-established methodology to decide on our future power plants to be installed in this country, because going nuclear is not an objective. Our objective is to meet the future demand for electrical energy in the best possible manner. And there are several sources of energy. All of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. So we need to optimize using the well-known methodologies. And if nuclear power appears to be one of those options in the future, according to this process, only then we could work further and start developing a program that would ultimately lead to installation of a nuclear power plant. So unless we are very clear about what we are discussing, I think we could be going in circles. It's very clear we are not talking about nuclear power, installing a nuclear power in this country now or within the next 10 years. We're talking about the future because we are planning for an uncertain future. We don't know how rapidly our demand will increase. It will depend on our economic development. If our economy really takes off, there's a large amount of industrialization. Our demand for electrical energy could increase significantly. So we may or may not be able to meet that demand with fossil fuels and renewables alone. We may have to consider nuclear as well. But on the other hand, if our demand does not really increase that much, probably we will not need nuclear. So knowing that there's a possibility, I think we should be prepared for it. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll have to rush into the nuclear program, which could prove to be disastrous. Thank you.
Thank you, Prinath.
Thank you, Prinath. Chula, could I give a very quick answer? Prinath, thank you very much. I am fully aware in 2010, South Korea came to Sri Lanka and decided to bring a nuclear plant. And the power and energy minister went to Geneva with a plane full of people and signed the contract for feasibility study. It is 12 years. 12 years. Why do we waste this money? The knowledge is there, and we need to decide now whether we need it or not, and then stop because we don't have money in the country. That's all I want to say. Now we are starting feasibility study again after 12 years. We go on and on and on, wasting money which we don't have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharme. And Tilak, Tilak, I think you got to talk next. Tilak, are you there?
Yes,
it's good
I'm
if
here.
if you give a little bit of background about yourself, it's really good for others to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tilak Sembalapitia. I worked as the Chief Engineer Generation Planning in CEB, but left very early in my career. In 1994, I left CEB. And I worked abroad for a while, and since 1999 I've been working in a consulting partnership based in Sri Lanka. We do work in the region in advising governments, banks, power developers, transmission companies, renewable energy developers, etc. On development of various aspects of the power system. In addition, I am a visiting lecturer at Moratuwa, Jaffna, Peradeniya, and Sri Jayawardenepura, generally on the subjects of energy efficiency, power system planning, and energy systems. So I think that's enough.
Thank you.
I have a PhD from Cambridge, dated 1988. All right, fine. So I just want to make some comments. I'll be very brief. I know you are really short of time. Professor Dharmadasa's comments, I only have two observations. Bangladesh did not listen to Professor Dharmadasa's advice. They are building the Roppur nuclear power plant to be ready by 2025, the first reactor of a capacity 2,400. So they may have their reasons to be perhaps the first developing economy of that size to decide to proceed with a nuclear power plant. So, and they are very proud about it. Then it follows from the same point of view. I agree with Malinda that Bangladesh is when you go on the road or meet people, it's a very disorganized place. But that does not mean that those people cannot be trained. Bangladesh is training those people to develop, plan, build, and operate the nuclear power plant. So therefore, I cannot agree with the thinking that Sri Lankans cannot be trained. Sri Lankans are not capable, because finally it is the scientists, physicists, chemists, medical professionals, and of course engineers and technologists who will have to put the project together, build it, design it, build it, and operate it if we ever decide to go for nuclear. So I'm not a nuclear enthusiast, nor am I a person who will totally reject the idea of Sri Lanka having a nuclear power plant, since I'm an electric utility planner. So you might find that sometimes I'm severely supporting a coal-fired power plant with very good reasons in my mind, and sometimes I am severely supporting hydropower plants, and sometimes working very hard to get a good tariff for the solar power developers. So therefore, as an electric utility planner, since I know the Sri Lanka system very well, even since I left CEB, I keep very good contacts with all the stakeholders in the sector. What we need is a mix of different types of power plants. No single type of power plant is going to resolve our long-term electric power needs. So I always, as a planner, I keep an open mind. Then there was a comment about renewable energy share. So you just can't make calculate a share of renewable energy by looking at yesterday's data, because we are now into the dry season. So hydro availability is less. And also there are many mini hydro power plants and solar parks, which are, and a couple of wind parks as well, but not many. But many solar parks and many mini hydros are not telemetered. So therefore, in the daily data set, you don't get those data summarized, because only the energy meter is read. So therefore, we have to look at annual energy, which gives a better picture from a holistic point of view. Last year, Sri Lanka produced 51% of electricity from renewables. Now you tell me which European country has more than 51% of electricity coming from renewables, or any country in South Asia? There is, that's it, Nepal and Bhutan, fully hydroelectric system. So I would like you to think, I would like you not to think that Sri Lanka is a very bad country, which uses a lot of fossil. No, it's not bad, because India is still struggling to reach 30% renewable energy share in their grid, and Sri Lanka is 51 already. So with that point, my last point is that don't be excited by newspaper reports about several wind power plant projects hanging around and not being attended to. I get visits from investors almost one every month. So they come in trying to get various feasibility reports done, in trying to push the governments and decision makers to accept their project proposals at their price. So if these projects came through a competitive bid and they are not being attended to, then I would say, yes, we have to immediately look at it, whether these came in on a competitive basis, but they are not progressing if they were the cheapest on offer. But these four names, when I look at the names, I don't remember that these projects came on a competitive basis. These projects come probably a dozen every year. As I said, I get so many visits from prospective investors saying, can you do the feasibility report? Then the next question I ask is, look, the Electricity Act says that power plants have to be procured on a competitive basis. Guess what these investors tell me? You don't have to worry about that. We know this politician and that politician. You only have to do the feasibility study. I will get the project done. So these are the types of investors coming in. So don't be too excited when you hear these newspaper reports, because they do not constitute, in my view, legitimate projects. These are unsolicited projects, and unsolicited projects are usually pushed by a politician, and there will be another unsolicited project pushed by another politician, and the two politicians will fight with each other, and finally nothing will be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilak, for that balancing information so that we will be in peace again. And I must thank everyone for spending their time, because our ultimate aim is to try and help Sri Lanka recover from all the problems we have. So even though there are criticisms and everything, we should not be with angry each other, because I think we ought to support every comment, because it's based on the information you have. So let's see and go on very peacefully. Kirti next, please. Yeah, Kirti.
Now, I'm assuming I'll have a 10-minute slot at some point today.
Yeah, you're doing a
Therefore, I'm going to
presentation. So
this
we'll
is not
come to
about
the
presentation. This I'm not going to talk about what's in my presentation, but I wanted to highlight two little points. So during my presentation, I might elaborate those things. First of all, I think it's Professor Prinath or Dr. Prinath. I think he made some sensible comments. We need to think about the future and how to manage the energy requirements. That's a very valid point. And also, I support that whether we use nuclear power or not, we need to maintain a knowledge base in Sri Lanka. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to use nuclear power today, or maybe even 10 years time or 20 years time, but it is important to maintain a knowledge base in every area. So that's one thing. The other thing is, to go with that, Mr. Tilak Siyamalapita also highlighted a very important point. He highlighted the culture in Sri Lanka, political interference. Now, what is important is, for any sensitive technology, it's not the technical knowledge or the technical basis important. We must have other infrastructure. We must have other legislative structure. We must have the values and systems in place. All the developed countries have the systems, and therefore they can afford to do things that we smaller countries can't do, for two reasons. One, our systems are not developed and stable. Two, we can't take the financial risks. So that's all I want to say. When I get the opportunity, I'll summarize some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirti. And in fact, we are an educational charity, and we do support knowledge sharing and knowledge development. So Nilbini next, please.
Thank you, Chula. First of all, thank you so much to both Malinda and also Dharme for really, really informative talks last week and today. And I can see that there's a lot of knowledge on the call today as well. So I'm coming from the point of view of a layman, really, or laywoman. I think, Malinda, you mentioned something about the UK and the fact that the UK is actually interested in developing nuclear energy. And I do know that EDF, it's a French company, that the safety standards are very high, and the UK is a relatively developed economy in spite of all our problems at the moment. And we are nevertheless, when I went for a talk on renewable energy and the future of getting to net zero, a group called Oxford Net Zero, organized by the Oxford University. The future energy scenarios that they discussed didn't seem to have nuclear power in it at all. There's no mention of nuclear power. They were talking very much in terms of getting to renewable energy by 2050, green energy, and they didn't include nuclear power in that debate at all. They were talking about solar, hydro, and when I asked a question, what's the cost involved? Why haven't you included nuclear? And they said, well, nuclear is much more expensive in the build, the capital investment, but it's much longer lasting compared with the solar and the hydro. The marine one is it's really good, but then it's very expensive. So, and when I asked whether somebody could come and speak to us today to present what their thinking was here, they said it's a bit too short notice for them to come. In fact, the 5 minutes that Chula you mentioned was I was hoping to actually offer somebody from the Oxford University, an expert, rather than me talking about it. But my question last week to Melinda was also, what are the cost comparisons between solar, hydro, nuclear, in this particular context of being in the middle of a debt crisis, financial crisis in Sri Lanka, but also in terms of the future, not just right now. In terms of, I know that the nuclear power plant could maybe last 60, 70 years once you build it, but then there is the other costs involved in maintaining, building, disposal, decommissioning, and all of that. So when you compare that with the shorter lasting solar or wind, has somebody actually compared the actual costs and in the consideration of whether or not it's suitable for Sri Lanka? But obviously, the other point I've been concerned about from the beginning is the fact that it seems to be a Russian-led initiative. Not that I've got anything against the Russians per se, it's just that in the current context, getting the Russian investment in Sri Lanka, like the Bangladeshis have done, is that the most sensible thing in the bigger picture, given that we've got loads of investment from the Chinese, a lot of investment from the Indians, and then now bringing in the Russians for more investment in a context where we've got very, you mentioned tsunamis and terrorist attacks in Dharma's talk, and we are susceptible to both of those. And so in that kind of context, in a very vulnerable financial position, is nuclear power the right thing for Sri Lanka is the question. So those are kind of my initial thoughts. I don't know what else you might want to say to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilmini. I think we'll go for Lakshman next. Lakshman, please.
Thank you, Chula. I will take only 2-3 minutes. First of all, let me quickly go through the negative side of nuclear. I think it was all mentioned by previous speakers, especially Dharme. It's too expensive. One of the most expensive power sources. Long time to install. Site selection is a problem. Cancer risk is a problem. National security is a problem. Accidents is a problem. Energy dependence on foreign sources to supply uranium is a problem. We lose our energy independence. Waste disposal is a huge problem. As somebody pointed out, we consume the uranium and leave it to the future generation to look after the radiative waste. Competition with renewables. Okay, we are still in a situation where renewables are developing very fast and the cost is going down very fast. There are new technologies, high capacity batteries and hydrogen. So our future will be quite different when you talk about renewables. And also I'd like to, after listening to Prinath and Tilak and Dharme, I am with Dharme 90%, but I would also like to have Sri Lanka a very strong knowledge base on nuclear science, especially as Prinath suggested, through a research reactor. Knowledge base is very important because whether we go for nuclear or not, that's very important. Maybe on some other day, future day, after 20 years, we might need nuclear. So this keeping this knowledge, strong knowledge base is very important. And as Tilak mentioned, one day we have had 51% from renewables. And also I would like to draw the attention of the audience to, there's a report, I think Tilak and Prinath must be knowing. There's a UNDP ADB report issued in 2017 with a forward by then Secretary Dr. Surain Batagoda. And that plan is a fully official report. By 2050, Sri Lanka will be 100% renewable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lakshman. And as you correctly said, information is very important. I 100% agree. And that's how you have better logic. Logic means proper decision-making process. So yes, that's what we should be doing. Ranjan, next, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chola. The reference that was made to the social instability, the political instability in Sri Lanka makes Sri Lanka unsafe for the development of and use of nuclear energy is a very valid point. I agree that people can be trained up to a train and used for the project. But the circumstances, the environment also must be helpful and supportive. And I think that is what was meant, what Dharma meant when he said that we are not a safe society to develop nuclear energy because of the dangers involved. I think it makes a lot of sense. Just look at the Easter Sunday attack that came from the blues unexpectedly. And what is worse is there was no one taking responsibility. There was no one taking responsibility. Even after the Supreme Court decreed that someone is responsible and he should pay 110 million rupees also as damages. Even thereafter, he refused to take responsibility. Just imagine in such a social environment, in such a social and political environment, the dangers involved. You see, just the dangers involved. It is far more serious. You see, unfortunately, sometimes professionals become parochial and they think only of their little profession. They don't think they don't give sufficient regard to the environment in which they operate in their professions. See, I'm telling you once again, you see, nobody in Sri Lanka was taking responsibility in any other country, in Japan, in South Korea, in England. In England, there are hundreds of examples, you see. They accept responsibility and they withdraw from the political stage. These people don't give up. Our political leaders don't give up. We have to wait till they die. And even after they die, they make sure that their progeny takes over from them and continues the disastrous policies. So there is a lot more sense in what was said by Professor Dharmadasa, you see, and I'm sorry to say that intellectuals, professionals operating within their narrow confines of the profession should relate it to the overall context, you see, overall context of the country, the society, and not think of the little area in which they operate alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjan. Prinath, you want to take your comment, please? Yeah. Prinath?
Yeah, sorry to take the floor again, but I thought I will respond to some of the issues raised by Professor Dharmadasa. The issue of cost. I fully agree. 1,000 megawatt nuclear power plant is beyond our financial capacity. And also we can't consider in our current total installed capacity, 1,000 megawatt plant cannot be installed in a country like ours. But as I mentioned in the last discussion, a large number of new types of nuclear reactors, which are known as generation 3+ reactors, are under development. And few of them are in operation. By within the next 10 years, many of them could become available on a commercial scale. Their capacities range from 60 megawatt to 300 megawatt. Some of them are in modular form. You can keep on adding modules as your demand increases. And the financial investment for those plants is much less than what you would require for the present type of, or generation 2 type of nuclear reactors, which are 1000 megawatt and above. So this is one factor, right? If you are going for a new generation 3+ reactor, the initial investment would be much less, and it would be amount a country like Sri Lanka can handle. And also these reactors have what is known as passive safety features. Now, one major shortfall of the shortcoming of the current reactors are they need electrical power for safe shutdown, right? Not just shutdown, you can stop the chain reaction, but the decay of fission products will keep on generating heat. Unless you remove the heat, the reactor can melt down. And if you lose all the power sources, you lose the ability to cool the reactor, and that is what happened in Fukushima. Now, this new generation of power plants can be safely shut down, and the decay heat can be removed without the need for external power sources or even the intervention of operators. They say even the operators cannot sabotage the plants. And the current reactors have the NRC limit for licensing of the current nuclear reactors is a core damage probability of 10⁻⁶ per year per reactor. And the new reactors, it is 1,000 times less. So you can look at the degree of safety of these reactors. Then the issue of waste management, high-level waste. Now, definitely Sri Lanka cannot handle high-level waste in this country. And if you are going for a nuclear power project, we'll have to come to an agreement with the country that is providing the reactor. That country will take care of our high-level waste for the lifetime of the nuclear power plant, which has to be a government-to-government agreement. And unless we have an agreement like that, I agree nuclear power will not be feasible. Then the issue of clean carbon dioxide emissions. Yes, certainly during the construction process, or even during decommissioning, fuel fabrication, some amount of carbon dioxide will be emitted. But it's nothing compared with the amount of carbon dioxide emitted in fossil plants, which happens on a daily basis. I mean, there's certainly no comparison. So it cannot be, you cannot say it is 100% clean. Some amount of carbon dioxide is emitted, but it will be much less than the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by the fossil fuels. So I would say there are certain disadvantages of nuclear power, like any other source. All other sources have advantages and disadvantages. So similarly, nuclear power also has disadvantages, and also it has a lot of advantages. When it was mentioned of the lifetime of the plant, almost 60 years, and you can store enough fuel for several years because the fuel requirement is so small, and you refuel the reactor once a year. The current reactors, but the new generation, it could be once in 18 months or even 2 years. And you can store enough fuel so that it is protected against any shortages or increase in fuel prices. In any case, the dependence on the fuel price of the cost of generation, the fraction of fuel as the total cost of generation is so small. Even if the fuel cost doubles, the effect on the cost of generation will not be very large compared with other types of fuel. So there are definitely certain advantages in addition to disadvantages also. And renewables, I don't think going 100% renewable is feasible in a country like in any country. 100% is not feasible. It is intermittent. It has to be always backed by a fossil fuel plants or nuclear power plants. We can go up to a certain level in my friend Tilak probably will explain this better. Intermittency is an issue, and also stability of the electrical power system is also an issue. Because rotating machines in conventional generators help to maintain the stability of the whole power system. If you have too many renewables in the system, it could affect the stability. I think those are the issues that comes to my mind. If I missed something, I will come back to it later. Thank you.
So thank you, Prinath, for that background information. And I'll invite Viraj next. Viraj, you may have to do a little introduction of yourself as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, hello to you all. Actually, at the moment, I'm doing current duties of the Director General of the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board. Then actually, about me, actually, I am not an energy expert, but my field of study is isotope hydrology. I graduated in University of Peradeniya in 2000. Then after that, I completed my master's in nuclear science at University of Colombo. Then after that, again, I did my PhD in isotope hydrology in University of Peradeniya. Then I just want to tell you what we are doing actually as the nuclear organization in the country. We have the responsibility to tell the government, actually not convincing. I'm not agreeing with the convincing to go for nuclear. Then we have the responsibility to tell the government what are the options we have in future for power. Then we have to tell about the advantages and disadvantages, and also we have to look on. We have to consider many aspects: human resource development, environmental concerns, and the regulations. Then technological matters. Then all these aspects we have to consider. Then for that, we are actually we have started this nuclear power planning project in our country. Then, as the nuclear organization, we have that responsibility to tell the government. Then government will take decisions in future. This is actually already mentioned, Professor Prinath. Then at the moment we are not, we have not decided, and we are not going to have a nuclear power at this moment. Then that is a future work. Then again, my next point is actually just before starting this discussion, actually there was a power cut for us. Actually, sitting in the dark, still we are talking about solar and wind energy. Then actually that, as I know, CB has more than, I think, 2,000 engineers, as I know. I'm not sure whether I'm correct about that figure, but this actually, this could have planned, discussed about decades ago. That's why we are having this type of power crisis in our country at the moment. Then our responsibility, again, I want to say, we need to find all the facts and all the information, not only in Sri Lanka, but also in other territories all around the world regarding nuclear power. Then we will discuss with the policymakers in future. Then again, the negative aspects also important to compare all these facts. Then as the nuclear organization, we are doing such a thing at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Viraj, about the operational aspects that you spoke. Mervyn, next, please.
Thank you, Chula. I have been listening to the very informative dialogue that is taking place. Just want to make a few more, add a few more thoughts. I fully agree. As a country, Sri Lanka needs abundant supply of affordable energy to move forward. They have been held back big time because of lack of it. And I know that India has had nuclear power and nuclear-based electricity since 1970s through their Baba Atomic Research Center and a number of nuclear powered electricity stations around the country that has put them in a good place. One of the things the first speaker mentioned was that India, as well as neighboring countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, etc., they all have their grid interlinked to give them that power security, but Sri Lanka hasn't. And I think an affordable, a quick one would be to take the necessary actions to negotiate the deal and link it so that we have that energy capacity, the security, to buy from our neighbors who produce. So to some extent, for me, I question this so powerful, so knowledgeable Sri Lankan electricity authority up to now, keeping the country in the dark and charging silly prices rather than doing the obvious thing to look after the help of the nation. So that's a bit of a question mark why it hasn't happened. The other point is, yes, having listened to the various presentations, I'm very impressed that International Atomic Energy Authority is extremely well-structured, well-managed organization that build the capacity, maintain standards around the world to promote safe nuclear energy. So in a way, I'm glad that Sri Lanka has a counterpart branch and our scientists, our senior leaders, senior management are working with them, learning from them and building our standards. And it is necessary, I fully agree, that we too build up our capacity, develop our skills as though we are going to have nuclear energy one day, as though just to increase our choice, to add another option to our energy mix. But it doesn't mean to say we have to rush and adapt it. To some extent, it's confusing because I don't know why. It may be the clumsiness of the politicians or they wanting to be seen to be doing something faced with the energy crisis, that they are sort of sending signals, making announcements as though it's going to happen tomorrow, which may be part of the reason why people are quite upset about it. So managing that message and being very clear as to when this is going to happen, there is a way of doing this to happen. Politicians can't just implement magic cup nuclear plant in 2 years' time, 5 years' time. Those things need to be made very clear and the general public needs to understand. And the other thing is, whether we like it or not, nuclear-based energy is around us in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh. So our backyard isn't all that clean. So we can't simply bury our head in sand and say, all right, as long as we don't adopt nuclear, our country is going to be safe. Far from it. It's around us. Our oceans could be polluted. So we need to build up that knowledge, that capacity, first of all, to test the quality of our waters, to make our environment safe, to build up that capacity and knowledge for nuclear-based medicine. And also, it's part natural education to our scientists, our future generation, to acquire that knowledge as well. So there's quite a lot of valuable things being said. I don't need to repeat anything else. My last concluding remarks are, first of all, I hope in Sri Lanka, a day will come when the culture has changed. People are informed, reassured that they trust our leaders sufficiently. A day when the people will say, oh yes, we also need nuclear energy, let's go for it. From a very informed position, I hope a day will come. It will don't have to be enforced and it will be through consensus. I hope a day will come. But on the other hand, I hope within that time that other technologies have developed so well that there may not be a need for nuclear energy because all the other technologies have, including hydrogen, has developed the capacity to give us the energy we need without having to go for nuclear energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn, for bringing that wider picture into the discussion again. Next is Nilmini. Nilmini, you are due for the presentation as well. Can you do both at the same time, please? So,
I actually, Shola, just to be clear, I wasn't planning on doing a presentation myself. I was hoping to invite one of the experts from Oxford University to come and talk to us in terms of future energy scenarios, but it was too short a time for them to join for this Sunday. So, but I have more questions than a presentation, really. But I keep going back to this question about cost comparisons because I still haven't heard a clear answer to that, because you've got the solar power, you've got the wind power, you've got the hydro power, you've got the marine hydro, you've got all these LNG, you've got all these other options. And I still haven't seen the comparison between those as a mixture against nuclear power. And so I'm just wondering whether the feasibility studies that are ongoing, they're taking into account those kind of comparative costs, as opposed to other factors involved, and the cost to the consumer at the end of the day. And the time scales are a bit unclear as well, because on the one hand, I saw that Reuters report from 2010 September talking about nuclear power, that the government's actually given the go-ahead for nuclear power in Sri Lanka back in 2010 in time for 2030. Now we're 2023, so 7 years from that date. So what exactly are the timescales? I'm really confused about that as well. And the other thing is this intermittence of energy. I'm not quite sure if I've understood what that means, but if I've understood correctly, it's because of the variable environmental factors like the wind and the solar, and different times of the year you get one or the other more of it. So this is a very naive question perhaps, but isn't there some way of having a national grid where when one goes down because of the seasonal changes, the other kicks in? So in October, November, December, where there's less sun, there's the hydro that kicks in because there's more rain. Whatever, I mean, those of you who are experts will find solutions for that, but there's an interconnected network, national grid within the country, rather than relying necessarily on imports from India or somewhere else. Isn't that a better solution? And also, if you're going for renewables, even if we can't achieve 100%, as close as possible to that, as Mervyn was saying earlier on, perhaps this nuclear debate might kind of fall away anyway, because we will have achieved renewable energy that provides most of our electricity, so that we don't actually need to even think about those huge costs that might be involved in nuclear power, as long lasting it might be. But there's these other issues as well, the wider picture. Do we want to have more foreign investors kind of getting another stranglehold on us? That's the other thing. That's all really. Thank you, Chula.
Okay, thank you, Nilmini. I think Tilak will answer your question in relation to costs very briefly. And then I have two other people, Kirti and Dharma is raised hand. But Kirti, I think you'll be able to do the presentation.
Before
Just
Tilak
a
speaks,
second. Can I go in order, please? Can I
take 30 seconds to answer Nilmini? Can I take 30 seconds, please?
No, I can't give you by force, please. Please, can I go in order? I'm just trying to explain the order, please.
I have been very patiently. All I wanted to say was that some of the questions that Nilmini raised, I may have the answers in my presentation. That's all. Thank you.
So just wait, please. So Dharme can come into discussion after Kirti's presentation, and let's listen to Tilak and then go to Kirti and then Dharme. Thank you.
With your permission, I will give a very brief insight into the costing. I think all of you need to download the latest long-term generation expansion plan, and I'm sure all of you can read and understand it, right? Because that gives you all about the options that were considered for the future power system in Sri Lanka, as well as the operating costs and fuel costs of all existing power plants, and how the future operation of the power system is modeled under different scenarios, and how the optimal development plan is developed. So there is a sequence of activities which all of you will be able to realize. So the answer to your question about how much solar costs, how much wind costs, all those answers are there. I don't think I should take time to explain each one of them. We cannot compare one technology with the other because each one of them have their specific features, both technical, financial, and economic. Now you might wonder why I say financial and economic. Financial means from a business point of view. Economic means from a national point of view. So technical, you obviously understand what it is. So if we simplistically, ignoring the technological differences between these different technologies and simply assume that each one of them can produce electricity on call at the time the customer wants it, do not forget that electricity is the only commodity that has to be produced exactly at the same time the customer wants it. Tell me of any other commodity that has to be produced exactly at the customer wants it. So that makes it very difficult for us to compare different technologies in isolation. But even if we forget about that technological limitation, seasonality, intermittency, etc., the lowest still, the cheapest still is hydro and mini hydro. I will not put nuclear anywhere. And the next one right now is wind power. But remember, it is seasonal. Hydro is seasonal. The next one right now is solar. Of course, if it is a solar park, it can be done at about 23 rupees. I'm just giving you some numbers. Rooftop solar is paid 37 rupees. I do not know the government's calculation. My calculation also comes to 37, which is just above 10 US cents. Now, in different countries you live in, please look at your electricity bill and find out how much you pay for a kilowatt hour. Don't say Sri Lanka is too expensive without looking at your electricity bill and without looking at your average electricity cost in the country. So, because we have to be reasonable in all these things. Then if I go quickly, the next one is coal, and the next one is liquefied natural gas, and finally it is fuel oil and diesel. So this is the ranking of different renewable sources and fossil sources to produce electricity. Again, do not forget that they are not equal when they are required to operate in a system to meet the customer demand, not at the time when the sun shines, not at the time when it rains, not at the time when the wind blows, but at the time the customer wants it. So you talked about battery power. Remember, the battery can be discharged only once. And batteries are being used for various purposes in the grid, not only to store solar power. Now in Australia, they are using batteries for grid stability, not to store solar energy, right? So, but if you come back to a very simple example of a household in Sri Lanka, putting all their solar power into a battery and taking it out in the night, today it is 37. With a battery, it will be 74, double 74. And don't forget, the Sri Lankan is still paying only 30 rupees per kilowatt hour of electricity after the transmission, distribution, and whatever costs of the so-called inefficient CEB. So solar 37, sold at 30. Solar with battery will be 74, still sold at 30. So obviously, you see you can compare the costs and the prices. So I will stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilak, for that explanation. And if you send me the link, I'll be able to distribute it to everybody later on. And let's go to Kirti's presentation, and then we will take it up from there. How to make it.
I guess now you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. This presentation hopefully will take much less than 10 minutes, although I asked for 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Before I start, let me introduce myself because I don't think many people know me. I don't believe I'm the oldest person in this audience, but I do feel like a very old man. Because I graduated from University of Peradeniya in 1972, well, January 72. I joined Peradeniya in 1967. In fact, there are many physicists in this audience, but I was the first class in physics from Peradeniya. Then I did a nuclear physics at University of Edinburgh under very prominent scientists in the whole world, including Nobel Prize winners in physics. Currently, I'm a non-executive director in a trust of academies. At Rolls-Royce, I spent 35 years. I managed huge projects. I was in the management team managing multi-billion-dollar projects. I was the principal scientist. I was the principal engineer. I ended up as the chief of subsystems. I also worked at A-System UK, who supports nuclear power in France and in other countries. I was the head of value stream for DARs. I also spent a short time as the technical manager for Consumers Association in the UK. So when I talk about these things, I'm talking with some experience. So my topic is question of energy in Sri Lanka. What is the way forward? What is the solution? This is simply to make you think a little bit. I'm not saying one thing is right or wrong. So what is the question? The question we have to ask is, what is the question we are trying to answer? The question, in my view, is not should we have nuclear power or not. The question is, how can we resolve the energy problem within 3 to 5 years to provide energy at an affordable cost to all Sri Lankans, not just one group, all Sri Lankans, so that we can make them maintain a healthy, happy, reasonable living standard whilst achieving sustainable growth in an environmentally friendly way, fulfilling all our commitments in the next 30 years. So I'm trying to make a smart question, smart definition. So it must be time limited. All Sri Lankans must benefit. They all must get affordable energy to maintain the living standards. So that's the question. But when you answer this question, we have to look at the bigger picture. We need to think about managing money and finances as well. Sri Lanka need to ensure that we only spend the same or less than we earn from our exports. Because we are talking about dollars here, we are talking about pounds, euros, or whatever, foreign currency. So unless we stick to the principle that we spend less than what we earn through exports, we will never be able to recover and grow. So that's one of the fundamental issues. Then say, okay, what are the possible energy systems? Already many people talked about different systems. I have listed some, not all of them, because I believe these are the most relevant ones for Sri Lanka. Once again, let me remind, in Rolls-Royce, when we are managing multi-billion projects, we have to think about the failure of critical components. And somebody mentioned the failure probability. We deal with failure probabilities of 10 to the power minus 9 or less. We deal with probabilities of some general components 10 to the minus 6 or less. So we have to manage safety. We have to manage reliability. By the way, in the background is the Rolls-Royce headquarters, which was started 120 years ago. That's my background. So coming back to the energy system that Sri Lanka can think about, hydroelectricity, coal-powered power stations, oil-powered, nuclear power, solar power, solar cells, wind power, biomass, energy from waste, and geothermal. As I said, I didn't include all of them. I included most relevant one in my view. So then we have to think, okay, how do we make a decision out of all these things? One of the factors is the unit cost of electricity produced by these systems. So that's why I said, I have collected the information. I have gone through all these things. The Nilmini was asking the right questions. So as I said, Nilmini, you may have some of the answers here. So the question is, what would be the cost of energy per unit? The unit cost is again in a range, depends on so many factors. In my next, and I'm going to use the traffic light system, by the way, rather than giving the exact values, because there is a range, there is a variation. I would use the traffic light system to say it would be green if the cost is lower than what we are used to at the moment. It will be amber if the costs are in the same range. There may be a few pences difference here and there, up or down, but in the same range is amber. If the cost is much higher than what we are used to in Sri Lanka, I'm talking about Sri Lanka, by the way. I'm not talking about UK. I'm living in the UK, but I'm talking about Sri Lanka. I'm using my expertise and knowledge to make a decision or help make a decision in Sri Lanka. So that's a traffic light system. So if we use only the energy system that we are familiar with, hydroelectricity, coal, oil, nuclear power, if you look at the cost comparison, they are all in the amber region. They are in the same price range. So somebody might even say nuclear is a little bit cheaper by a few pence. But they are, in my view, they are in the same range. but that is not enough to make a decision. In Rolls-Royce, we were dealing with multidisciplinary projects, multi-skills, multi-technologies. So we had to look at all the technologies, all the issues, and make a reasonable judgment with the help of all the experts. So what are the other influencing factors to make the decision? So apart from the cost of production, there are many other factors. How much capital do we need? In some cases, there are multi-billion dollars capital, and we are trying to struggle to get a few $1 million at the moment. So can we, even if we get the money on a loan, can we pay it back? What sort of interest? So we have to not only think about the capital, how do we finance it? We have to think about it. And is the technology sufficiently developed? Is it available in Sri Lanka? Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the infrastructure ready and developed in a timely manner in Sri Lanka to support these technologies? And have you got the skills and resources in Sri Lanka to support whatever the technology? I think somebody already mentioned, nuclear power is, even if it is cheap, even if it is good, we will be paying to create jobs in Russia or China or some other country. It would not create many jobs in Sri Lanka. Yes, it will create 10, 20, maybe 100 jobs, but I'm talking about thousands of jobs in the vendor country. What about raw material for generation power, whether it's coal or oil? How much would that cost? How much would that add to the problem? And what are the potential risks, including the end-of-life disposal of these systems? So these are a lot of issues. Again, I can go on various issues, but I selected the top few that we must consider. So again, I'm going to use the traffic light system. Green, if it is a favorable situation. Amber, if there are some favorable, some not so. So amber means there are some issues, but we might be able to manage. Red means highly unfavorable for Sri Lanka. So on that basis, I have prepared this table. So this is how we make decisions in Rolls-Royce. We summarize the information so that people can look at it quickly and analyze and get a feel for it within a few minutes without spending 2 hours in discussions. So in this chart, I got hydroelectricity at the top. As you can see, for hydroelectricity, they are all green or amber. Coal powered, it is amber, green, and 1 red. Oil power, amber, green, and 1 red. Nuclear power, you can see there are lots of reds. For the large plants, it's a green. Even a small to medium modular reactors, you may know that Rolls-Royce is the only authorized manufacturer in the UK to deal with nuclear power. Rolls-Royce is manufacturing and developing the SMR for UK. So the next green is solar power. As you can see in solar power, they're all green, 1 amber. Wind power, a lot of greens and rest are amber. Biomass, 1 red, green, and amber. Energy from waste in Sri Lanka at the moment is mostly amber and red. Geothermal is red, only 1 green. So you can see in this chart, my conclusion is I'm not against nuclear, because in fact, in the UK, we are supporting nuclear in the short term, but not in the long term. For Sri Lanka, there are 3 obvious choices: hydroelectricity, solar power, wind power. And somebody was talking about solar and wind are not available every day, but there are solutions, effective, commercially viable solutions. So now let me draw the conclusion made by the Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis in the USA. They published a report in February 2022. That's less than a year ago. It's available in the internet. Anybody can check it. They concluded for the USA, SMR, that's small modular reactors, are not the solution in the long term. They concluded, even for the USA, the solar and wind power is the long-term answer. Of course, they have huge nuclear power plants. They are operating all the time. They will be there forever. but to manage the climatic issues, climate, and in an economical, manageable, affordable way, they are recommending solar and wind power. So my question is, are we bigger than USA to go against that philosophy? So thank you very much indeed. I hope my summary is useful. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for that excellent presentation from you, and also talking about bringing in the Rolls-Royce smart planning techniques to this discussion, which is very important. And I'm sure that will be very relevant and useful for planners and so on. And Nilmini, you raised the hand, and I will allow Malinda after that to summarize. Thank you.
Just to say once again, could somebody please answer that question about comparative costs? Because thank you very much, by the way, Keith, that's really helpful to have that traffic light system, and as a layman, it's much easier to understand that way. But I'm just wondering in terms of that, that cost of
Nilmini, I think Tilak was going to send in a link so that all the comparisons have been made. And so I've asked him to send in the link. I think he's Prinath.
May I say something very quickly, Chula?
Yeah, okay.
In answer to Nirmini's question, although I have used traffic light system, I do have all the information about cost comparisons. I do have the costs.
Okay,
so
that's great.
I can provide that information in private.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And the other thing I just want to quickly mention was this question about intermittence of availability of renewable sources like the solar and the hydrogen and the wind. I mean, is there a national grid in Sri Lanka where one can kick in if one is kind of, waning in some way? That's one question. The other thing is Malinda's presentation last week. There's one thing that struck me, Malinda, and it's the fact that the nuclear project seems to be based mostly in the north and the east of the island. Now, what are the political implications of proposing building nuclear reactors in the north and the east of the island? Has that been thought through as well?
I think Malinda will be best to answer for this question. I was hoping Professor Rosa, who is the chairman of, is he there, Malinda?
I missed the question by Ms. Nilmini. Can you repeat it again, kindly?
Yeah, essentially, in your presentation last week, Malinda, when you showed us where the proposed sites for the nuclear power plants would be, it looked as if the feasibility studies are taking place with a project for the north and the east of the island on the basis that it's less densely populated, or I think that was an explanation that we got, that I understood at least. But has anybody thought through the political implications of locating nuclear power plants in the north and the east, just generally, given our recent history?
Actually, we only conduct regional analysis only. We still not conduct deep site characterization and site evaluation process. But according to the International Atomic Energy Agency methodology, we only conducted the regional analysis only. In that perspective, we identify 4 regions from north, western, and 3 regions from eastern coastal area. But according to when we compare and contrast the technical parameters and sociological aspect, Manhattan to Japan area is ideal, but we have to carefully study the technical parameters. It's mean seismic issues, soil stability, water coolant source availability, and those kind of things we have to carefully identify. We only done grassroots level in the site selection area.
Thank you.
I want to share some screens, one more screen. Ms. Nilmini asked that compare and contrast about the energy sources wise. This is again from the CB long-term generation plan last approved in 2018. Actually, at that time, US dollar rate is around 180, 190. Now we assume if US dollar is around 365, the cost may be double. In that perspective, lowest cost gain from coal, solar and wind and LNG. Nuclear is competitive. Nuclear cannot be said lowest cost energy source as per the CB calculation. This is the one of the slide I gained from the Ceylon Electricity Board long-term generation plan, which is approved in 2018. The cost is only for the generation cost only. We have to add the transmission cost, distribution cost to these parameters as well. In addition, I want to add some slide about this one. This is nuclear. It's kind of a halfly renewable source. If we if we use nuclear fuel, then that fuel can be said that as a spent fuel. Then that spent fuel can be mixed with the uranium, and we can reprocess as a uranium mix oxide. Then again, this fuel can be used as used within the reactor. This reprocessing fuel used in Russia, France, and Japan, but Americans still not use reprocessing fuel in nuclear reactor. In that perspective, nuclear is a kind of a halfly renewable, but it is not a fully renewable source. But nuclear can be most of the well-established trustworthy energy sources categorized as nuclear as a clean and green energy source. It is not a renewable source.
Thank you.
That is my one more minute, Professor Chula.
Yeah.
This one. This slide actually I gained from the World Nuclear Association report, which is based on London. This is the life cycle GHG emission intensity of electricity generation method. It's shown. In that perspective, nuclear is also given very lowest GHG emission. This is actually gained from the full cycle. It means front end, operation end, and back end. Entire cycle within the compare of the entire cycle of the nuclear fuel cycle. Nuclear is very lowest GHG emission shown. This is actually this source gained from the World Nuclear Association report. So this is some of the slide I shared, which raised from the audience. Actually, especially Ms. Nilmini raised some question in that perspective. I share this slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, Malinda, thank you. I think we're really coming to 2 hours in our meeting, and we normally conclude because otherwise it's too long. And I think we had lots of good answers, good comments today. And maybe if you're using smart planning techniques, you now know the resource people who can be contacted for your feasibility studies. Now, I think Silak was going to answer the question, and then Dharma has also raised a hand, and we'll conclude there. And if there's a need in the future, please let me know, Malinda, and then we will call another meeting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Tilak, please. Yeah.
Fine, thank you. I'll be very brief. I want to answer a question from Nilmini. Yes, Sri Lanka has a national grid. The grid goes all over the country. All locations in the country are connected to the national grid. So all, in principle, or in a practical sense, all households and buildings have a grid connection. So that's number one. The national transmission grid also covers the entire country, which means all main cities are provided electricity at the transmission voltage. So therefore, it is easier to handle intermittency. Now, what we mean by intermittency is very simply fluctuations of renewable resource availability, particularly wind and solar. So wind has a seasonality as well as intermittency. And solar, as you know, it has a little bit of seasonality in certain areas of the country, but very significant intermittency as well. Say, for example, if a cloud approaches a solar park, its output can go down from maximum to about 10% within 10 minutes. So you will see the output going down from, let us say, 100 megawatt to 10 megawatt over a period of 10 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. and it may recover after about half an hour when the cloud passes the solar park. So these are, some of the features of intermittency. And I think just a quick comment to Malinda, in your potential siting areas for a potential nuclear power plant, you had indicated the coastal belt between Mana and Jaffna. But I have to say that that is the most renewable rich area of the country, particularly wind power. So please do make a special attention to this area, because that's the area where we have an average wind speed of 8.3 meters per second. And we already have about 100 megawatt of wind power operational in Mana and 40 megawatt of wind power operational in Jaffna, and a lot more being planned and under construction. And finally, on Kirti's presentation, I found a column missing for the technological quality index. So which means your comparison is on the basis that all technologies are equal when it comes to supply of electricity on demand. Supply of electricity on demand. It is not so. Solar power, the resource limitations or features of the resource. And secondly, electronically interconnected technologies, that is solar and wind, do not offer any inertia to the grid. So inertia, you know what it is, half I omega squared, and there is no omega in wind and solar because it is electronically coupled to the grid. So there are, of course, there's a lot of research going on as to how we would supplement the loss of inertia when you go for renewable technologies, because the big power systems in the countries that you are living in are all heavily supported by nuclear, coal, gas-fired electricity power plants. So they are also cautiously moving away from the traditional sources, but without compromising the stability of their grid. Because inertia is required. Inertia means the stored kinetic energy. The stored kinetic energy is required to stabilize the power system. If you lose the transmission line, then it should be able to quickly restabilize without collapsing. If you lose a large generator, then again, you've lost the power. You've lost quite a lot of production capacity, but all the customers are still connected to the grid. So it should be able to quickly manage itself without going through a system collapse. So those are some of the points that I want to bring in. And finally, in Kirti's comparison, I'm surprised why oil and coal are the same amber when it comes to the cost column, because oil is not a fuel that we should be using for electricity production. And that is the curse of Sri Lanka. As you know, as you may have noted, Sri Lanka plans to produce 25% of her electricity from oil next year. So all this ministerial, infighting with the PUC, CB, all this is because we plan to use, and we are already using too much of oil for electricity production. What happened to the projects that were to bring oil use to zero and build renewables, build coal, build gas-fired power plants? What happened to those projects should be a topic for a separate discussion. I can explain to you. So it's not a problem that we don't have plans. It's not a problem that we don't have money, because say, if you just take one example, Noracholi coal-fired power plant has paid off itself within 3.5 years. So even if you resolve all the differences and build a nuclear power plant, instead of using so much of oil, the simple payback period could be 6 to 7 years, not 20 years that you see, because we are doing the worst thing in the absence of other technologies by using oil. And so Sri Lanka's problems are not necessarily lack of understanding or lack of finances, but inability to make decisions and the political interference that comes in with all these decisions. And finally, no decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilak, for that comment. And I think we all should be pleased that we have making contributions to a better Sri Lanka in the future. So don't be disappointed that you'll be criticized and so on. That's all important part of the conversation. And I will just allow Dharme to conclude, and then we will meet up again if it's required. Malinda, you can let me know. in the future, and also
Because
Tilak,
because Tilak referred to my presentation, I need the opportunity to answer him.
No, please, we have gone off time now, so let's ask Dharmesh.
No.
Let's ask
This
Dharmesh.
is not how meetings are conducted. Tilak made a special reference to my.
Just the timing is an issue. Let's ask Dharmesh for ask Dharmesh, and then
Dharmesh, can you allow me to talk first for 30 seconds?
No, Dharmesh first, because he's raised the hand. Please, can we go along peacefully, please? Dharmesh, yes.
Check whose hand is first at the moment.
Dharmesh raised first.
Is it Dharmesh?
Yes, Kirti. Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
I have been raising hand for a long time. I will be very quick. I just want to make a comment on Tilak's comment. Tilak said that Bangladesh government didn't take my advice. In fact, their question was, their government already decided. The minister asked, we have decided to go for nuclear energy. What is your opinion? So I gave my opinion. That opinion they don't have to accept because they have already decided. But what I said was the truth. It is a giant. It will give energy. One day accident happen, it will kill tens of thousands, and also it will destroy the land as well because nobody can live there. So that was so they don't have to take it is my opinion. My second point is, I have been promoting renewables since 1992, 3 decades. What I saw was CEB was completely opposing renewables. The government was in a deep sleep. In fact, lately, now because of this crisis, government is waking up to renewables. But what happened was, in 1992, we had only 3 solar energy companies in the country. In the private sector, now we have active 60 solar energy companies fixing solar roofs and other applications. So we have 650 megawatt solar from solar roofs. Can you see how much energy coming into the system? My last comment is, a lot of nuclear technologies don't talk about decommissioning. I'm very familiar with Sellafield decommissioning because it just started now. The engineers come and talk to us. In fact, they say that for 50 years, we cannot do the decommissioning. They don't know how to find the funds and the time it takes because everything else is radioactive. So it is not like building. If building takes 10 years, he said it will take 50 years for decommissioning. So please consider that. My concern is this. In 2010, they signed a contract with South Korea, did the feasibility study for nuclear energy. For 12 years, what have they done? They are wasting money. And now they are, with Russian pressure, they are starting feasibility study again. They are wasting our money. That is my concern. I think this is a technology. These educated people here should give the decision to politicians. This is a technology not suitable for Sri Lanka. Please don't waste money. Say no to them. Have guts to say this is not right for Sri Lanka now. That is my comment.
Okay,
I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharmesh. Yes, that is true. If you are an intellectual, you must express your concerns without actually modifying it to whatever the environmental needs or political needs. So anyway, Dharmesh, okay, Kirti, you can go, but please note that we are not doing individual arguments in here. Everything that we do is for the betterment of the country, and that's how we should conclude. Yeah, Dharmesh, yes, Dharmesh, Kirti, yes, final comment. Thank you.
I think if you look at the spreadsheet, the chart with red, green, amber, there was a very clear conclusion. Hydroelectricity, solar, and wind are the long-term solutions. But unfortunately, I think that point was missed by someone when they was asking the questions. And also, in the USA, the Institute of Energy Economics organization, they have published a major report on this issue. They have clearly shown that in the long term, the cost of electricity produced by nuclear will be at least maybe at least 3 times more expensive than solar and wind in the USA. And also they have found ways to manage energy storage issues. And so in Sri Lanka, I think the key issues are how to develop the grid, how to develop the storage capacities. There are simple solutions available in many countries. So please think about it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kirti, and thank you all for making such wonderful comments today. And in fact, this is a very highly sensible, very highly technological topic. And you can see how your individual knowledge is contributing to this. I'm a medic. I have no clue about this at all. So I'm just listening and trying to organize in a manner so we will come to proper conclusions. And Malinda and all who are actually leading these projects, please do take comments and please do communicate with anybody else whom you want to communicate, and they will all support you to help you make the correct decision. And thank you so much for everybody here today. And we've run a little bit late, but thank you again. And if there's a need to meet up again on this subject, we'll do that. Yeah, thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, Chula. Thank you.
Thank you, Chula.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for